Okay, we are going live. All right, there's the image. There we go. Looks like we are up and running. That's what I like to see. And we're back again today to continue this painting of the Orcish Bowmasters that I had going. Did a little bit of work on this yesterday, but it's been several days progress at this point. And we are enjoying it so far, so let's go ahead and jump back into this. I actually might turn down this music a smidge. So this is again, this one's Diablo Lo-Fi Beats to Treasure Hunt 2. And as a result of that, we're not going to get any copyright infringement issues because it's video game music and whatnot. At any rate, yeah, let's hop back into this Orcish Bowmaster fellow here and see how we do. Alright then, do a little, definitely need to do some work on this guy's armor here. See if I have the right layer, yeah. Oh, you know what? I'm using the wrong brush. I was like, why is this not doing anything? It's probably because... yeah, so we're using the oil paint flat brush in Clip Studio, which has some nice kind of blending properties. You know, it's kind of designed to, it's one of the default brushes. It's kind of designed to mimic the feel of using traditional oil paint. I'm not really an oil painter myself, so I don't know how well it accomplishes this task, but it definitely has that kind of like smeary, smudgy quality you get when you see people painting in oil, and sometimes they'll just like go over like the whole painting with like a rag or something just to smear things around. And it kind of has that vibe to it, which has some benefits and some drawbacks. On one hand, it means that you can sort of unify the colors and do almost like some shading through blending. That keeps the color somewhat consistent. On the other hand, it makes it difficult sometimes to maintain certain levels of detail unless you're working with like a smaller brush. At that point, you know, when you work with like a really thin digital brush, you tend to run into the issue of kind of focusing on the line art too much as opposed to paying attention to those values and planes and such. Yeah, and with this process, I really do want to be focused on more of this as like a painting as opposed to a drawing. And there are some distinctions there that we got to keep in mind. I say that, and really what I mean is, like, I am enjoying this as a painting process and not as a drawing per se. There's not necessarily as big a difference between those things as you might imagine because it is digital, of course. You know, really it's all kind of drawing, but I think when you say I'm going to paint, you say I'm going to draw, there is sort of a headspace and an approach that you get into that changes the way you make decisions, and that's important to keep in mind, of course. And today, some things I need to do with this guy. I need to refine some of the details of his armor. I think get his kind of musculature figured out in his arm and define some of that a little bit more. Probably get some variations, some additional variations in color for his skin tone. Adding some kind of warmer colors in certain areas like his hands and his face, his knees, getting some of that kind of like those blood flow areas, getting a little red into those areas, you know. it's another thing when you're painting on one layer with a brush like this, there is a tendency to sometimes accidentally, but of course obviously on purpose as well, blot out details, and sometimes that's not what you're looking to do, and that can be frustrating. So you have to be a little bit careful with that. I think I'd like to, at some point, really take some time and explore what other options I have with different types of brushes to add to this process. But right now I'm really enjoying the direct nature of this, very direct painting process. Okay, I think maybe getting his arms like a little more lean could be one of the things that I'm looking to do. I do have this bow on a different layer now, which may help me with some of this decision making. Sometimes, yeah, it's definitely, I'm finding like picking your battles with this, getting certain things out of the way by having, placeholders around to kind of give you space to work around is important. Maybe let's attempt to get some of those warmer colors in here, because why not? Give him some red around his nose. And his kind of flush areas around his cheeks and such that are typically blood vessels being more close to the surface in those areas. I want to make him look like he's blushing, of course, but just a little bit more color here. I'm going to go through and blend some of this and make it a little more get a little less splotchy, and we can come through and kind of redefine some of those shapes that maybe that lost some definition there in a moment. Even maybe come through and get a little bit, get a little bit of this kind of redder color in the shadow areas as well, in the shadow shapes. One thing I'd like to work on is kind of adding more depth to different areas of value and light by essentially introducing kind of a more nuanced set of colors into those areas. Complementary colors, warm and cool, that kind of stuff that I'm not terribly well versed in as somebody who is primarily doing color just as like almost like a paint by numbers thing on a lot of like digitally inked projects. So stuff there, it's very line art focused and line art heavy. And this is definitely like a different approach. This music is kind of freaky. I kind of like it. Okay, hold the phone here. I'm just going to the link for this stream. Just share it out with a couple of friends, see if we can get somebody to join us in here and have some fun listening along. Grab a screenshot of this fellow here. There we go, there we go. Close that up and we'll continue the work, as it were. Enjoying setting down of shapes and colors and values and all of the good things that come with working on painting things and not worrying a terrible amount about whether you're doing it right. I'm sure that there are much more efficient ways to achieve the finish and the various effects that I'm looking for, but I'm not terribly concerned about that right now. Mostly I just want to have something finished that I can not worry about anymore. I want to have fun with the process first and foremost, and then figure out ways to make it more efficient later. And maybe it's a sort of thing where you just sort of pick that stuff up naturally over time. It's certainly a way to learn, and then it feels like fun the whole way through. I have no illusions that that will be the case for this. I've certainly already run into issues where things have gotten a little out of my depth on how best to proceed, and that has made some of these paintings, like this one for example, I had a couple other options for the composition that I sort of wish I had proceeded on, but then I came back to this one. I was like, well, I've started this one already, and this is much different from the original iteration of the piece. But that's okay, to be honest. I think it's better than the original version of it. And right now, I think what's going to end up happening with these kind of like more red hard lines is I'm going to end up blotching them out for by going back and kind of reestablishing these values here. Getting some forearm anatomy reference might be helpful for this as well. So what I'm going to do is go back into this kind of blue-gray shadow color. And again, I think I mentioned, as opposed to just going straight in with like a blending tool, you can kind of use the oil paint tools to function for that, which is nice. but then with the oil paint, you're also, of course, adding additional pigment, if you will, to that blending process. So it's not just a straight up blend of what's there, and you don't necessarily have more control, but you do have the ability to do different things with it. Plus, this being a flat brush. Oh, hello, Lily. Hello. Thank you for stopping by. Appreciate the company. Hope you're doing well today. Just working on this orc painting. And I'm hoping to get this done pretty soon here so I can send it off to the card printer. Working on anything fun, Lily? Cool ink drawings? Working on a scene from Howl's Moving Castle. Wonderful. I love Howl's Moving Castle. I've only seen it once. There are some movies that, I have such fond memories of them that I don't want to go back and rewatch them. That's kind of weird, but I feel like some of my favorite movies I've only ever watched once. And then there's other movies that I, watch every year. Lord of the Rings. I feel like I watch the trilogy once a year. Not necessarily sit down, popcorn in hand, watch the whole thing, but put it on in the background while I'm working or something. That's awesome. What scene, may I ask, are you working on? I'm concerned that this music is almost too dark and dungeon-esque. I have to change it up. Even though we are working on orcs. Housewarming gift for my friend and her fiance. So Howl and Sophie standing together on the balcony. Oh, that's nice. Sky and clouds in the background. Yeah, that's something I want to work on more too, is upping my backgrounds and sky and clouds game, because I love the number of ways you're able to render clouds and make them look convincing and interesting. Just because there are so many fun abstract shapes in clouds. So I would love to see that as it develops. I don't know if you've posted that in any of the Discords, in the Discord space that we're in, but I have a couple pieces that I'm sort of leaning into that a little bit. This one I might do some kind of more abstract-y stuff with the probably won't be clouds because it's a tree forest scene, but with the bushes and stuff. Yeah, I'd love to see it. Feel free to share when ready. No pressure, of course. Sometimes with certain pieces, I feel like sharing them too early makes me not self-conscious, but almost less inclined to work on it more. That can happen sometimes. I don't know. I think it should be completely up to artists when and where and how they want to share their work. So, and I also am not totally married to how these eyes are on the armor here. I got to figure that out. I should probably do some design sketches for some of this stuff. But I also really like just working on these and seeing how they come together naturally, which is something fun you can do with painting. I know, Lily, given that you're an ink person primarily, there's a little bit more finality. And I've done some ink stuff myself recently, and there is this a point of no return on some of that stuff, certain areas of the drawing. And I haven't worked too much with corrective tools or anything. I know that's pretty common in like comics art, or at least was in the past before digital was really a thing. But using whiteout and things like that to sort of like smooth things over and fix mistakes and whatnot. But in this case, it's funny because there's like sort of this. It's like with digital or with a digital painting or something like this, I can smudge over or go over or like redo any part of this at any time, and that is both liberating and paralyzing, because it's like, well, everything could be made better, and there's not any reason besides my own willingness to commit time and effort that I shouldn't go back and like fix certain things on these digital projects. But at a certain point, you just got to call it a day. Whereas with ink, 100% point of no return vibes. There just comes this point where it's like, well, there's really no way to salvage what I've created, and so it's going to remain as such, or I'm gonna have to start over. And again, I think there's, like, for me as an artist, it's very much a thing for me where I like to have a diverse set of different workflows. I like to dabble in a lot of different things, but it is. It does mean that I end up kind of in a jack of all trades situation. Let's see, Lily says, I used to have like paralysis about starting, but nowadays I'm just like wary and sore backed and sigh F it. Yeah. So like, I've definitely gotten over that, like starting paralysis, or, it's not necessarily that I didn't have starting paralysis. I had, paralysis like finishing things. So I would start a lot of projects and then not know exactly how to take them to a finish. And that's something I've gotten over more and more so in the last year, really, I would say. Taking projects to a place where I'm, proud of the finished version. I'm proud to say that it's finished and not just put it out there and say, look at this sketch that I did. But yeah, I'd imagine, especially like that really detailed inking stuff, the back issues being a thing. I've had some long drawing days this year where I end up like twisting around to get something too quickly, and then my back is just like, oh, you shouldn't have done that. I just immediately feel like an old man. It's yeah. Oh yeah, finishing things is key for tracking progress. Yes, definitely is. I think I don't know what it was. I think there were these points where I would start a lot of these projects, and I would really enjoy the sketching phase. And I got this feedback a lot from different mentors that I worked with. It's like, yeah, like I really like your sketches, but yeah, you should work on your finish. Work on just like committing to a project, or like bringing some of the energy from the sketches into an actual finished piece. Well, I see that you have sent me. Oh my god! Oh, geez! Wow, this is beautiful. Very nice. Yeah, that's gorgeous. I love the. I'm trying to think of like what this reminds me of, but it's like. So right now I'm commenting on this Howl's Moving Castle ink drawing that Lily sent me, and it is Lily's style. And Lily, I don't know how If you want, you can send me like a link to your stuff, and I can post it in the chat here for posterity. But I would love to share out your website because yeah, you have such a beautiful stippling style, and when you see it, it's like so obviously very time consuming and effortful, but it has this very soft and like your shadows are like incredibly well developed, but it has a very soft and I don't know, I don't know what word I'm trying to look for, but there's this sort of static finish to it that almost makes it look like it's on like a black and white TV. And this is me like reacting to this piece of art in a very impromptu way. So if I'm inarticulate, that's why. But it's a gorgeous piece. Just wanted to say that. Anyway, let's see here. Yeah, I think I would not get far as like all traditional or all digital artist. I think I always go back and forth between the two, and I find a lot of enjoyment there. Like right now I'm in this phase where it's kind of weird. I went through this phase where I was like, I hate digital, and now I want to make oh, someone else made the black and white TV comment too? Yeah, I think it's just like it's because just like what stippling is, it's like lots of dots. It's like basically how TVs or pixels function, and so it has this a similar visual quality to that, and I think that's very cool. And it's another it's like obviously anime art. I know anime art is not your focus. Typically you're more of a realist, or I don't know if you'd call yourself that, but it's the way that you work means that no matter what kind of subject matter you're tackling, your style kind of infuses itself into that work, and that I think is really valuable as an artist. I don't know if I've quite found that. Found a style that is like, oh, that's innate drawing, and it will be very obvious that it is so because I dabble in so many different things. I think that's more fun. Yeah, doing all sorts of aspects of art. The tiny canvases I was doing these big ink drawings that were like very impromptu, but they were all like goblins and stuff, and so I was just doing that stuff. And then I think what brought me back to digital was this process where it is a very kind of direct painting process. And so it feels like traditional, but you have the freedom of digital to kind of like mess things up and go back and fix it later kind of vibe. Not even fix it later, but just without hassle, paint over things and change them, and you don't have to worry about smudging things and making a big mess. Yeah, you're right. I don't do anime like ever. Oh, thank you. So innateness to it. Yeah, I don't know what that is exactly. There are some things that I think I could point to, but for the most part, often it's subject matter for me too, because like most of the time I am drawing like weird, gross little goblins and orcs and doing crazy demons and stuff like that. And I think that there is something like to that in the types of shapes that you get in the anatomy, and that is all kind of a function of developing a style, where that's part and parcel with style. Subject matter, I think people take for granted that is like style, that what you choose to draw contributes to what people associate with being a you drawing or a you painting or sculpture or whatever it is you're working on. It's a non-trivial thing. I think that there is this this kind of layman, I don't use that in a derogatory way. I just mean like a non-artist sort of interpretation of what makes a good artist, and often that involves like assuming that if you're an artist, you can draw whatever thing, and that is like your ability to draw from nature or draw whatever you're looking at determines your overall quality as an artist, when really like many great artists essentially only do like a couple of different things most of the time, or they stick to a kind of limited set of subject matters, or stuff like that. It's like that's why not all artists do anime. Not all artists do pet portraits. I've been doing pet portraits not out of out of necessity, not out of an actual desire to do them. But when you tell people you're an artist, it's like, oh, it's like, so you can draw this or that or this. And some artists are pretty good at kind of bridging that gap between, taking whatever skill set they developed, making things that they like, and then just making anything. I think a lot of artists think of that as being the dream, the ability to make anything with their skill set. But to me, I think the dream is ultimately to be in a position where you can make whatever you please without needing to consider the desires of anybody else. Yeah, Lily, I think I remember, I brought that up maybe somewhat subconsciously informed by the fact that I know you did one recently. Commission pet portrait. It was great, but it was also like, I don't think I can keep doing this. Yeah. Honing it in is a good thing. And to be clear, like the pet portraits that I've done recently, at least I was able to put my own spin on them. Like somebody wanted one that was like, oh, I want my pet as like a D&D character. And so I'm like, oh, I can totally do that. Not everybody can be good at everything, or else it'd be an uninteresting landscape. Yeah, totally. I think, it's like your opinions as an artist that make you an artist, that make your work worth something in a sea of artists who are, you'll inevitably find people with greater skill, greater virtuosity, cooler work, just on a kind of undefinable level. But as long as you're saying something distinct from those artists, you're making a worthwhile contribution. And even if you're not, I guess like I don't know like what. I'm trying to think of art that comes from a place of genuine desire that wouldn't be a worthwhile contribution. Maybe it's not going to be something important or super impactful, but it'll probably speak to somebody in a way that makes it worth making, even if it only speaks to you. I think the act of creating is often motive enough to produce art. It doesn't have to be for anybody else. Although it helps when you're trying to make a living out of it, that it be for somebody else. So for this project right now, I'm making this series of paintings that I want to turn into Magic the Gathering proxy cards, essentially, so you can play with them without having to pay like $50 to $100 for the actual cards. But also like Magic is like not something I've been into for a very long time, but it is so up my alley in terms of the themes and the styles and the subject matter that is explored in that card game, because it's sort of like the theme of it is it's like people going around to different universes, fantasy universes, and like duking it out. And that freedom of exploration, the kind of like wide open playing field that is presented for an artist, for a fantasy artist in a context like that, is really appealing. And while this is kind of like explicitly a commercial venture, it's also like, well, that speaks to everything that I want to be doing as an artist. So, and Lily, I'm not sure what the laughing faces were in reference to. I just noticed that. But hopefully I said something entertaining there. I think I said I was gonna. I might do an additional layer to get this guy some armor on his arm. Figured that out a little bit. There are many aspects of the game to enjoy. Some folks like the aesthetics and others like the gameplay. Yeah. I think I'm definitely an enjoyer now of both of those things. And I like, I do really enjoy making things that kind of like meld those two elements, like sort of like a bridge the gap between a kind of a functional understanding of what a thing is in the context of like a game and the aesthetics of it. I think that is a fun creative challenge, and then you get the additional like bonus of like people who know maybe the lore, or who know the mechanics of a thing, and then they see art that is rendered in such a way that it speaks to those things. They'll appreciate it, and that can be gratifying. Yesterday I was noodling away a lot on the trees in the background here. I realized, like, really the focus should be on not the focus, but I need to focus more on the actual guy, the dude in the scene, because that's what the card is named after. It's named after the dude, not the trees in the background. Yeah, it's funny. Yesterday I was on stream and like a fella came into the stream who was I don't think he was an artist. I think he was primarily a Magic the Gathering person, and he and I were just talking about a deck that he was making for like most of the stream, which was really funny. And obviously the conversation totally changes when you have a fellow artist in the chat with you. And when I find myself drifting to other parts of the drawing, I always realize I'm actually procrastinating. Yeah. Totally. That is totally a thing. Or like, so there was a piece that I posted recently. If I could bring it up here. Let me see. Okay, I will find it. Where the heck did I put it? Nope, not there. Yeah, my file organization system is pretty lackluster, I would say. Oh, this isn't even the one no, this is a different one. This is not what I was going for. But although this one, there's probably examples of that same thing happening here, where I would go back and I would keep rendering like areas that were like already kind of more or less finished, and then ignoring like the background where it needed the most work. It probably still needs some work, but that was particularly true of this other piece I was working on. Yeah, it was this one. So it was this piece where I was having a lot of fun with these kind of abstract, kind of weird bony shapes up here in this painting. And like completely ignoring, like I was like, I need to figure out something with volcano and the mountain, and I got to do some like landscape stuff that I'm not really terribly well versed in. And I was just like continuing to noodle away on this, which is fine. Ultimately, if you don't have a deadline you're trying to meet, or you don't ever really need to finish the project, but there's definitely some stuff on this, and I probably will continue to refine this one a little bit. But there was definitely some stages where I was like, I kind of need to get back to working on the key elements of or not the key elements, but I need to work on other stuff so that the rest of this doesn't look terribly over-rendered in contrast with the terribly under-rendered remainder of the piece. think, yeah, Steven Zapata once told me and some other students of his, like, the only thing that determines when a piece is finished is if the focal point of the piece, like the area that carries the point of the piece, is more highly rendered than the rest of it. At that point, you can kind of call it finished, because the most important element is rendered to the degree that you desire, and the stuff around it is not rendered, whatever rendered means to you in the context of the style you're working in. And I always felt like that was a kind of important piece of advice to get me to the point where I felt like I could finish stuff, because then I had sort of a semi-objective measure of when I could say I was done with something. It's like, is this orc more rendered than the tree in the background, or as rendered? Yeah, Steven's awesome, but like that like sort of even that very simple kind of framing of it really opened up some part of my brain that was like, oh yeah, you could actually finish some of the sketches that you do. Yeah. Yeah, and to be fair, yeah, it's like productive procrastination, because as long as you're working on the piece, and as long as it's continuing, there's something to be said for that. I think it is important to be able to take time out of the kind of bigger elements of whatever you're working on, and still enjoy the process of continuing whatever momentum you have on that piece. Yeah, I was I'm really jamming through these paintings very quickly, but I definitely feel like there's a lot of places where there's room for some significant improvements or refinements, or areas where it's like, okay, I need to go and actually and learn some stuff about painting before I kind of like jump into this again. Like right now it's very exploratory and just kind of enjoying the feel of the process and experimenting, which is good. And I feel like the next step is to actually read the James Gurney books that I bought. Yeah, I've definitely been churning them out, and it's like there's good and bad things to that. I don't know. I kind of like gotten past the like, you know, like some art teachers, some teachers generally about a number of different subjects, will say things like, you know, if you're not like following a regimented training schedule or something, or if you're not like learning the fundamentals or whatever, you'll develop quote unquote bad habits. And I think that's maybe true to some extent. It's like it's like you could be worried about developing bad habits, or you could do the work. And it's more important to just do the work. Do you feel like you were sensing a technical gap? Yeah, I would say that the technical gap for me is like, really, this is a very intuitive and not particularly like thought out exploration of like color for me, for example. And like color and lighting are not something like I have a strong like understanding of. Like I render things in a way that it's like I sort of understand the basic forms, and I can do some very simple lighting scenarios, but I really like to make the lighting more dynamic. I'd like to explore like rim lighting more, and really use that as a way to enhance the drama of my stuff. The other thing is like trying to import some of the more flowing and dynamic like an anatomy and like character design elements from my sketches into this, you know, kind of painting setting, because I just feel like when I go and render over it, I'm losing some of that dynamism. And that's a very common problem that a lot of painters face, and a lot of artists in general, like people who work in comics will talk about that a lot, is like going from the pencil to the ink stage. You end up losing a lot of the gesture, for example. And so that's kind of what I've been struggling with. My experience is similar to yours in that I have relied mostly on intuition until the last few years. Yeah. And so I kind of went through phases where it was like, there was a phase where I was really studying quite a bit, I guess, and it was more so on the anatomy side of things. Like I was doing the art fundamental stuff. I was looking at Andrew Loomis. I was looking at George Bridgman. I was watching Proco videos, and I think that stuff was really helpful in a way, but it was also somewhat paralyzing. It was also like, it's like, okay, you got to learn all of this stuff before you can functionally go out on your own and make anything, and that's just not true. It's like you're going to learn a lot by studying this stuff, but if you're not, making the type of art you want to make, in a finished capacity, you're not going to learn the actual fundamental stuff you need to learn to make work, to make stuff. You can really only do that by exploring the process from start to finish. And I think exploring it in an intuitive way is really important. Because if you're following your intuition, that probably means you're having fun. And if you're having fun, that makes the process very sustainable. I'm a child of project-based learning. Yeah. That's, I think that I've come to understand that it's like really, definitely like the best way to learn something like art or drawing. Treating things as, it's like I have a goal in mind, and I need to, and the things that I study, or even study in the sense like I need to get reference for XYZ thing in this particular, for this particular project that I'm doing, like that study. You're learning as you do it. I came across this, like, I think it was like a thread. It was a thread on Threads, which I don't know that anybody actually uses Threads. I only incidentally use Threads because I am on Instagram, and they try to bombard you with people's thread posts, and there's a lot of like art stuff that gets thrown at me. And there was this thread that was about like, the title, this kind of self-title of like self-taught artist, and sort of deriding that and being like, well, nobody's truly self-taught because you learn stuff from books, or you take a workshop, or you do whatever, and that stuff's really valuable. And it's like disrespectful to those teachers or something to call yourself self-taught. And I'm kind of like, I don't know, this, to me, it seems like a very rhetorical kind of distinction, because you could make the exact opposite argument, and I think be on pretty solid ground. It's like, well, actually, it's like no artist is fully like taught by somebody else. It's like if you're not actually doing the work, it's like you can't learn to draw by being lectured at, for example. But then the other thing I thought of was like, but actually some people, take their lineage as an artist as part of like a teaching tradition very seriously. And if you're not part of that, saying it's like, oh yeah, I took a workshop, or I read this guy's book, and that means I'm not self-taught, it's like that's also maybe, I don't know, not disrespectful, but it sort of like diminishes, what the purpose of a teacher is. I think being a teacher of the arts kind of carries with it its own set of challenges, and I think it'd be worthwhile to say that somebody who takes the time to really train and study with somebody for a long time, to say that they're not self-taught would be accurate. But for the most part, I really do think that like most artists are mostly self-taught. like often the time spent in the classroom does not determine your abilities as an artist. It does not determine, you know, the bulk of what contributes to your style. And this is just me rambling about this because I had that thought while I was reading that thread. And I don't know, I'm curious to get other people's thoughts on that, because sometimes I think it's interesting to explore those rhetorical dead ends, as it were. Yeah, Lily, you agree? Yeah. I think once you experience like learning as an artist, like, I don't know, I had some really terrible art teachers in high school. I had a couple very good art teachers and a couple art teachers that were just like, you could sort of learn important things by just watching them be crazy weirdos who did their own projects during class. And that was like valuable. I don't know. I think there's a million different ways to learn anything. And in the arts, it's very much so the case. But often you will find yourself on your own, and you will find yourself being unable to understand things until you've really taken the time to explore them, you know, with the training wheels off, as it were. Lily says, when I derive inspiration from any other artist, they can become my teacher. Maybe not even in art itself, but how they carry themselves and approach their ideas. Yeah, totally. I think, yeah, and I think there is like, because you could, I mean, if you are closely following somebody's career and curriculum and thinking of them as like a role model, you know, I'd say it wouldn't be disrespectful to say that they're your teacher, or it wouldn't be out of line to say that they're your teacher, or a teacher, or somebody who has taught you important things, and then and that's like inevitably going to affect, you know, your work in ways that you can see, and ways that will be sort of below the conscious mind, which is also very cool. I think ultimately, like, we don't have as much control over what influences us as we like to think, but often great artists can kind of harness their influences in really productive and interesting and dynamic ways, and make cool, unique stuff while still being part of a lineage of many influences. Yeah, I think it is underrated, like, because I think technically speaking, you know, on a technical level, there are certainly artists who take like a lot of instruction, and they, you know, they develop their style through, I mean, not rote memorization, but through, you know, pretty strict regimens of training in, you know, how they paint or draw. And in those cases, they gain, you know, a very technical skill set from their mentor. But then there's like, what I almost see as the more common thing in art education, which is what you're talking about, Lily. It's like, how do they carry themselves? How do they react to instances where a drawing or painting or whatever they're working on fails to meet their goals? Like, how do they deal with failure? How do they think about their art practice in a spiritual or intellectual way? Stuff that like doesn't directly translate to technical skill or style in terms of like what shows up on the page, but that ultimately is incredibly important for the sustainability of your art practice, the you know, the sometimes the business side of things. Lots to be learned. Too much for one lifetime. Okay. Yeah, I definitely need to do some work on this guy's armor here. Gotta figure some things out. This looks too much like a fish, realizing. I want to have kind of a unique Eye of Sauron kind of design going on here. But that probably requires some forethought into what I actually want to do with this. I have to head out for now. Thanks for the chat. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, for saying I'm super rad. I love flattery of all kinds, and I can't subsist without daily and sometimes hourly boosts to my ego. So that is incredibly validating and necessary for me to thrive as an artist. And I appreciate you saying so. Lily, you're awesome. Thanks for stopping by. I'm sure that we will chat soon. And I cannot wait to see the progress on your Howl's Moving Castle piece. Looks awesome already. Bye, Lily. Take care. All right, now I'll just keep plugging away on this here orc armor. I think one thing that I'm going to work on more in the future is, because one of the paralyzing things about layer management is that you sometimes like forget what's on what layer, or until the piece is more established, you don't know what will be more or less productive to put on certain layers. And with this piece, for example, it would be nice if his entire forearm here that's going to be holding back that bowstring, it would be nice if that was on a different layer. It would, not going to lie, it would be nice. But it is not, so now we have to deal with that getting in the way of how we want to design this armor. Because I am doing what I think would be considered somewhat of a no-no, which is doing the design process and the rendering at the same time, which is problematic because it means that you have to solve all the problems at once. And if you're solving all the problems at once, that means that it just makes it more difficult overall to achieve what you want to achieve with the piece. It just makes it more complicated, makes the process more complicated. You could have solved these problems on their own, distinct from each other. That being said, I do really like the fact that you can just kind of paint directly over the thing and the design kind of appears, and then you can kind of worry about how you're going to render it together after the fact. Benefits and drawbacks to any approach. Avoiding paralysis while you're working. Incredibly important. And I don't mean, because there's a difference between, of course, paralysis and stopping to consider your options. Like slowing down, taking a little further consideration on your choices. There's nothing wrong with that, of course. But sometimes, like a lack of pre-planning even can cause paralysis, and you want to avoid that if you can at all costs. You want to avoid anything that's going to unnecessarily hinder your progress or stop you from continuing the work as you planned. Kind of like that. That's kind of cool. That feels cooler from a distance for sure. I think we're getting somewhere with that. Definitely getting somewhere with that. Okay. Let's see here. Yeah, so I do like where that's headed. And I think we'll be in a good place soon to start adding a little more details to some other areas of this armor. We're starting to develop some interesting little nicks and scratches and some more of this stuff down here, but just across the armor, and maybe establishing something of a we gotta get an eye on this side. But I was gonna say one thing I gotta consider is how much do I want the armor to shine? Do I want to depict that? Is it gonna be pretty dull and ruddy? It would seem that would make sense, but I do want to have areas where it definitely has like a little more polish to it, or at least you know, some of that light, reflected light coming off of it. Definitely think like, yeah, that area. Oh, yeah, I'm liking how that looks a little better already. I do need to figure out some of the kind of shadow areas that would be created by these parts of his armor. Yeah, we don't mind that. I think that's looking okay. Looking a little better than when we started. Let's just block in the other eye on his shoulder pad here. At least get that going so that I don't forget to put it in. Only thing when you're working quickly, not that I'm working super fast on this like right now, but like when you are trying to meet a deadline or something, it definitely is worthwhile to set yourself sometimes these little reminders in the piece. It's like, yeah, if you put something glaringly obvious, it's like, okay, there's stuff going on over here. I need to remember to make sure to put that stuff in and render it at some point. Then at the very least, you have some marker that tells you to do that. All right, that's something. That's something. think I should have like something like white coming down. Yeah, okay. Do I like that? No. I don't like the way I did it, but I like the idea of it. Maybe it's even just like... Let's see. Something like that, where it's kind of converging. And again, this is a... maybe we just... We table that idea. We don't even leave ourselves a reminder. We just table that idea. I'd like to have something in his armor skirt thing here that sort of reflects what's going on up here. Figuring that out. One thing I am procrastinating on, speaking of procrastinating from earlier, is the bow. I might actually want to take some time to sketch out some design ideas for the bow. And while we procrastinate on that, I will go back and fill in a couple of these spots in these trees that we're missing. Get some of these knotted trees in here. And clean up some of these areas. I do need to add another Orcish Bowmaster in here somewhere. Even if it's just like a actually having a... Yeah, even if it's just like a... kind of like a dark blue, like... That might be a little too dark, but we'll see how it goes. That feels a little bit lazy. It feels like that feels a little bit lazy. We'll have something a little more rendered than that, I think. Maybe I should leave him there as a placeholder, a reminder of what not to do, which is just stick a silhouette in there and call it a day. No, I'm liking where this is heading. Maybe we noodle on the trees a little bit more. Kind of figure that out. I don't know. I like this. Yeah, maybe some of the foliage we go to next to do a little work on. Okay, that's all on one layer, so we'll go in and flesh that out a little more, I think. Develop some of these shadows here to give the foliage a little more detail and three-dimensionality. It's more like, this is more like lichen or moss, but we want it to appear somewhat dense. And if you want it to appear dense, then giving a little bump up in the giving it more volume. Obviously, we'll do that. In order to create an impression of volume, there needs to be something puffing out, and if something is puffing out, it will create shadows because it takes up space. And if there's a piece of an object taking up space, that means that it will come into contact with light. And if it's coming into contact with light, that means that it's stopping that light from getting somewhere. You see what I'm saying? You see where I'm going with this? The light cannot be everywhere. It's a very reductive analysis of why things cast shadows. Hope you like that little piece of science and physics, what do you call it? Trivia? Little science physics lesson for you. Yeah, this music definitely it definitely does jive with the dark, foreboding forest vibe that we got going on here. What the heck is this? It's like a piece of missing pixel or something, which we don't love. We'll make it a little more gray, a little more blue, a bit darker. Kind of go back in and productively procrastinate a little bit more by randomly adding little details into this foliage and shrubbery here. Gosh, yeah, I don't know who's gonna watch this. What age demographic? Or you know, or where they're from. The shrubbery comment just made me think back to my formative years watching Monty Python and the Holy Grail, which was which I don't know if I'll ever be able to watch Monty Python and the Holy Grail again. And that's because it was like such a meme when I was in college. It's like, oh, everybody's into Monty Python. Everybody loves the Holy Grail. I went to a private Catholic college, and there was this contingent of somewhat insufferable, insufferable, but, you know, mostly, well, I don't even want to say mostly well-meaning. Some of them were, I won't say anything else, but basically, you know, people who are obsessed with Monty Python is like the peak of comedy, and I don't know. And then I was forced to sit through it as part of, you know, we had an event through the History Club or something, where they'd like, you know, they have on a projector in one of the big conference rooms or something, they'd show Monty Python every year. And since then, I just have had very little interest in returning to Monty Python, unfortunately. Even though it is, you know, a fairly genius comedic film. I still think Monty Python and the Holy Grail, Quest for the Holy Grail, is good. let's say it's a bad film, but it's not one that I think I could ever really watch and enjoy as much as I used to in my youth again. Which is true of many things, I suppose. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with the material. But you can never skinny dip in the same river twice, as they say. What I did find really funny was like the notion of like a bunch of like pretty religious like Christian people like loving Monty Python so much because those guys were fairly irreverent and I would say even critical of the church. Just generally speaking. And so, you know, I don't know if it speaks to a lack of self-awareness or an ability to, or rather an ability to laugh at themselves that that stuff was still so popular with that population. Probably a bit of both. But I digress, as per usual. Yeah, I feel dumb. I put some of these plants on a different layer. I don't feel dumb about that, but I feel somewhat annoyed at myself for having done such a thing. I think somewhere in this there needs to be the introduction of some kind of warmer lighting scheme to kind of bring out some of these cooler greens and blues. Make things pop a little more. Some of these trees, you know, for example, feel a bit dull. I like how this is developing, but I also have to consider, when this is turned into a card, what is actually going to be in the frame. And actually a lot of this stuff here at the bottom is probably going to get chopped. It's potentially going to be chopped, so we'll have to consider the implications of that, as it were. And I think with that, let's see, how long have we been going? We've been going for around an hour and 20 minutes. There are probably other things that I need to do today. And as a result, I think I'm going to go ahead and see if I can jump off here. I think I will do that. All right. Well, ladies and gents, thanks for stopping by. Hope you enjoyed the stream if you were able to make it in and check it out. And if not, it'll be here posted for all eternity for any to enjoy. Hope you're drawing out there. Hope you're getting your creative work done and getting that stuff out of your brain that you need on paper or in clay or whatever other medium you happen to use. And we'll see you next time where we continue drawing and painting more of these mystical creatures and magic proxies. All right. See you later, everybody. Have a great day.